camera and no problem at all. And also for communication purposes, feel free to use the Zoom chat. You're most welcome to use your microphone, but if you don't want to, if you've got any questions during the session or after, feel free to use the, just the voice, of course, or if you prefer, just drop us a note in the chat, and depending on the question, we might stop, go through that concept again, or alternatively, just address it at the end. Okay, so I hope that works for everybody. Hope everybody can hear me and see me just fine. If that's not the case, please let me know. Okay, so welcome all. Let me do a very quick introduction. So we are CodeUp. CodeUp is an international tech school that is created for women, trans, and gender non-conforming people. Now, we're a passionate bunch of people that we love doing from coding to product management to data and analytics. And one of the things that we really, really like is to share knowledge with the community. And in the spirit of that, wanting to share, we arrange those workshops, right? Now, we have been doing a series of workshops. So you notice that this is JavaScript 2. We've done 2 previous sessions. So we've done JavaScript 1 and also HTML and CSS. Now, if you have not attended those sessions, don't worry too much about it. We're going to do a bit of a recap. And then what we'll do after is this session. We're going to send you some links to these sessions so you can easily be up to speed. Okay, and you'll be able to continue learning alongside with us. Okay, so this session is a series of JavaScript sessions that we're going to be doing. Now we started a few weeks ago, and we're going to be doing it for a bit longer. And so yeah, we're really happy to have you on board. Now, introductions. There's 2 of us today here from CodeUp. I'll introduce myself, and then I'll pass it on to Tina. My name is Roger. I'm originally from Barcelona, but over the last say few years, I've been with code, getting myself in code. Now, one of the first things I want to say is that I know code might seem daunting. I know that when people talk about code, it seems like it's very difficult and I just cannot get my head around. Trust me, I don't have a background in computer science. I self-taught initially. So a lot of the learning I did was on my own. And then I started getting more formal education. And now it's been a few years since I've been with code. And trust me, it's easier than it seems. And today's workshop hopefully is going to be, proof of it. So that's about me. I'm going to pass it on to Tina to introduce herself.
Hey everybody, my name is Taina. I'm Brazilian and I live in Portugal. I work in CodeUp for 2 months now, and I had a background in computer science and I love to code. The thing I do here is supporting you and mentoring you when you have projects, and yeah, that's it.
Cool. So that's a bit about us. Now, I think there's a question. No, there's just a comment. So I think all good. Hi, everybody. So Tanya, if you want to go to the next
Yes.
slides. Yeah. So actually, yeah, that's fine. Just want to know a couple of things just to get the ball rolling. Tell us whether you use programming at the moment. Feel free to comment in the chat. Do you use programming for work? Do you use it for personal interest? Have you ever coded before at all? Just let us know, and then that will be awesome. Yeah, so feel free to comment in the chat, and also let us know where you're dialing in from. So I'm dialing in from Barcelona, China's dialing in from Portugal. So let us know where you're dialing in as well, just to get the conversation going. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to Tina, who's going to get started with a bit of a recap. So the first step we're going to do is we're going to do a bit of a recap of the key concepts that we talked about in the previous lessons. Now, for those that attended the previous 2 lessons, we're going to keep it brief, but also make sure that you keep an eye on it, because it might help you sort of refresh some of the concepts. And for those that did not attend it, keep your eyes peeled, because it's going to be useful concepts. And with those concepts, you're going to be able to follow along just fine the rest of the workshop. Okay. Now, if there's some of the concepts that Tina talks about that you wanted to explore in more detail, let us know. But also after this workshop, we're going to send you the links to the previous workshops, so you can just watch them at your own leisure, and then you'll be able to just follow along just fine. Okay. So Tina, over to you.
All right. Hey everybody. So let's talk about JavaScript. If you have some questions, just put in the chat. All right, just a quick recap here. We have 3 elements. We have HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So HTML is basically everything that is the structure of the page. CSS is the presentation, the design of the page, and JavaScript is the interaction. So basically everything, buttons, adding a product in a basket, submitting form, is everything with JavaScript. Keep this in mind, this division. And JavaScript variables. So I like to think JavaScript variables like boxes. So for example, if I'm going to move to another apartment, I have my belongs and I put them in shoes in a box, in a shoes box, and clothes box, and books box. So with those boxes, I can manipulate and I can move to another. Sorry, I'm going to start this again. So I like to think JavaScript variables as boxes, because with boxes we can manipulate our store, our data. So I'm going to give an example with an apartment. If I'm moving from an apartment to another, and I need to manipulate my belongs, and I have, for example, 3 boxes. This will help me to put my belongs in a place and manipulate them as I want. So with JavaScript is basically the same. We use variables like boxes to store our data and to manipulate them. And 2 quick important things. First, we need to know that JavaScript boxes, we can just put 1 piece of data on there. And another thing is we need a unique name to that boxes. So for example, if you are in a classroom and you have 2 Johns, and the teacher says, and the teacher call one John, they're both won't know which one you're talking about. So we need unique names to JavaScript know which boxes we're talking about, which variables we're talking about when we have 2 variables. So the way we construct we create a variable with a keyword let, and then a unique name, and then the assignment, and then after the content. So here the equal sign is different from maths, is to assign something. So the content is going to be inside the variable.
China, just on that thought. So if you go to the previous slide for a second, please.
Yeah.
So just for everybody here, that's effectively how we create variables in JavaScript, right? Now, I would like to, China, if you could go to the previous slide for a second, just to make sure everybody is aware of
the previous slide.
Yeah, just the division of HTML, CSS. So just to make sure we understand these concepts. So any website that you build, right? Any website that you build is going to be consisting of 3 main languages, right? So to speak, it's 3 instructions that the browser understands, right? One is a set of instructions for HTML, the other is CSS, and the other is JavaScript, right? Now, you don't need to know HTML or CSS for today's session, but we're going to be talking about JavaScript. So it's important you understand, for those that have no background whatsoever on programming, that when you build a website, it's going to be consisting of these 3 sets of instructions. Okay, so a browser, right? So you're using right now Google Chrome, for example, or Firefox, or Safari, or Opera, Vivaldi, or Brave, or Internet Explorer, or Edge. Any of those browsers are an application installed in your computer, right? So that application, that program installed in your computer, is going to go and access a file, right, to create a website. So when you go to google.com, they're going to, your browser is going to take a file, and this file is going to be written in 3 sets of instructions, right? One set of instructions is HTML, that defines the content and the layout, right? The second is presentation. So that is changing colors, right? So for example, HTML, you will define content. So paragraphs, images, text, just the bare bones of your website. That's done with HTML instructions, okay? Now, those instructions, if they were acting alone, they would be very boring, right? Because it's just coding. Imagine if you using a text processor like Microsoft Word or Google Docs, and you just wrote text and put an image, that just looks a bit sad, doesn't it? So you would have CSS to effectively complement that. What CSS does is effectively takes care of anything that has to do with presentation. So colors, font size, the space between the lines, things like that. So anything like the size of the font, the type of font that you use, anything that has to do with presentation and design. Make sense? Now, once we've got some content and then we have some presentations, aspects, then we go on to interaction, and that is JavaScript. So what JavaScript does on your website is it takes care of interaction. That is anything, when you click a button on a website, when you put an item in a basket, you do these things thanks to JavaScript, right? So when you access a website, you're effectively having three forces at play. One is HTML, the other one is CSS, and the third one is JavaScript, right? And they all have a very specific mission, right? Content, presentation, and interaction. Now, at that stage, before we move on, any questions on this? Is this division clear? Let us know if there's any questions, or just hopefully just try to conceptually understand this. If there's any questions, let us know. Yeah.
All right. A quick thing about JavaScript, which is interesting, is that JavaScript is in 93% of all web pages on internet. So it's a huge thing. All right. Roger, do you want to talk something about it, or can I move on to types of data?
I think you can move on.
All right.
So, yeah, move on.
Okay. Now that you talked about variables and types and JavaScript variables. So we have types of data that you put inside the JavaScript variables, okay? We're going to show here two types of data. And the first one is strings. For example, everything that you write on WhatsApp, on Facebook is text. And in JavaScript interprets everything that is between brackets, between quotes, JavaScript interpret as text, and the name for it is strings. So, for example, here we have let shoes and the boots between quotes. So if we have any text, JavaScript will interpret it as strings. And we have numbers as well, which is numbers. So those are two types of data that you can store in a variable. Okay, so arrays is basically very similar to variables, but the difference between them is that, as I said, variables can store just one string, one piece of data. So for example, if I have a shoe box, I just can store that boots, okay? Or a number, if the type of data is a number. With arrays, we can store a collection of data. So with arrays, I like to think about arrays like a big box with sections inside this box, which you can store more than, you can store a collection of data. So the difference here between arrays and variables is that we have the keyword let, we have the unique name, the assignment, and we have square brackets at the beginning and a square brackets at the end. And we have all the elements and the comma between them. So here, for example, we have 4 elements. And as you can see, you have indexes for it. So don't worry about the index. JavaScript does the index automatically. So think about it like as a book. With books, we have indexes as well to find the elements. And for JavaScript, for example, here is very straightforward. For example, if you want to find sandals, we just can look at it and find sandals. But if we have 1,000 of shoes, it will be much more easier to have indexes to find them. So accessing data in JavaScript is basically you write the name, and between brackets you put the index. So you just have to to do this, and you obtain the element inside the array. Roger, would you like to add something?
Yeah, so before we move on, does that make sense? So Tina talked about variables earlier, right? So when you start with JavaScript, you need to manipulate a lot of data, right? So JavaScript does not understand, we don't like data being floating around the cosmos, right? So what we do is we put it in boxes, right? So as Tina mentioned earlier, we put it in boxes which are unique, which is a variable name, right? And then as she mentioned here, let us know if you have any questions, but just to recap, if you want to put multiple values in one variable, then we put it in what's called an array, right? So that's how we store it, and that's how we obtain the information, right? So I think that's perfect. Just want to make sure that we ground all those concepts, okay? If there's any questions, just drop a note in the chat, okay? Thanks.
All right.
Cool. So I think it's on me. Actually, I'm going to present China. I'm just going to go and present. Let me know you see my screen.
Yes.
Do you see my screen?
Can see your screen.
Yeah. You see my screen?
Let me see on the chat. Yeah, I think everybody can see.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Cool, perfect. So if you don't see my screen, let me know, okay? Now, what we've seen thus far. Just I got a couple of slides and we're gonna get into practical mode, everybody, okay? Now, what Tina taught us earlier is how do we store variables in an array, right? So as you see here, we create a variable, right? We store one piece of information in the variable, right? So text, boots stored in one variable or a number, right? Then we've seen how we store multiple values, right? Now, what I would like to show you now is, you can say, Roger, this is very good and everything, but now that I've got information stored, how do I now manipulate this data? How do I do things with that data, right? Now, I'm going to show you a couple of very easy examples. Now, when you create an array, and remember, an array is just this type of variable, this type of box that allows you to store multiple values in it. JavaScript gives that variable another magical power. Now, the magical power in particular is called a method, right? Now, a method is nothing but a power that the variable has that allows a specific action to be done on its values. Let me explain myself. If I write down shoes, right? That's the variable name. I'm not creating it because I'm using let, right? I'm not using let, the variable already exists. I'm saying to JavaScript, heads up, I'm going to be doing something with this variable, right? Now, what I can do is use a method. A method is a word followed by a dot. So it's dot push, right? I know there's a little bit of space here, but that's all together, right? So no spaces. Shoes dot push, right? And then I put some brackets, right? What this is doing is a native way for JavaScript for you to manipulate your data, right? So if I do that and then I write down, for example, a piece of text inside those brackets, what JavaScript is going to do is it's going to add this text at the end of the array. And it's going to do so automatically, right? Push always puts whatever you put inside these brackets at the end of the array, okay? Right? Now, that's a type of method, right? Now, you would say, Roger, why would you do that? Why would you just have an automatic way of you adding elements at the end of the array if we could do it ourselves, just simply adding an element at the end? Because the websites that you build have to be self-sustainable. So if you build a website for a client of yours, and you ask your customers, hey, tell me the city that you're from, and then I input that text and I send it to your website, right? You're not going to have your website open and receive all the requests and manually storing them in your database. You're going to have ways for the code to automatically handle that input, right? So if you ask in your website, hey, tell me, user, where are you from so I can personalize your content, now that information needs to be stored automatically. So that's a small example of how can JavaScript allow you or native ways to store the information that it receives automatically and put it in an array, okay? Now, just like we've seen push, there's also a method called pop, so shoes.pop. What this does is it removes the last element of the array, always the last element of the array, okay? And it does automatically so you don't need to specify anything in the brackets, okay? Now, any questions on this? Just want to give you a bit of intuition about those methods. Before I move on, any questions on this? If so, let me know. Otherwise, I'm just going to show you actually in code. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to transition. I'm going to transition to my browser. Sorry, which is here. Right. Everybody can see this screen.
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Now, what it is, what I'm using here is a platform called CodePen, right? Now, CodePen is nothing but a platform that allows you to see the code that you build and effectively the result of your website. So you wouldn't use CodeApp in a professional environment, but you would use CodeApp for learning. That's effectively a platform. It's almost like a sandbox for you to practice and learn, right? Now, remember what Tina told you earlier about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript? What CodePen allows you, and is a free platform you can just all create an account for, allows you to put some HTML, put some CSS, put some JavaScript, and the combination of these three languages together shows you this website at the bottom. So what I've got here is the website that I've got thus far, right? And this website is the result of these HTML instructions, CSS instructions, and JavaScript, right? So that's what we're using. Now, because we're not going to be doing HTML or CSS, I can just close this, and we're going to be focusing on JavaScript. Now, you'll say, Roger, what is this code that you have here? Well, this website that I built, and I'm not very good with design, is effectively with some of, I think some of the people that are attending this workshop have a similar website. If you want to build something like this, feel free to just watch the previous episodes of this, and you'll receive the instructions there on how to build that website on your own, right? We're also going to give you a boilerplate. So we're also going to give you a boilerplate. So in case you want to, just start from, you don't want to start from scratch, you're also going to have some code to play with. Okay. But to understand the concepts, make sure that you watch the previous episodes. So here I've got my website. Now I want to show you just here, I've got the some JavaScript, right? So these are the variable, right? This is an example of an array. And I've got here, this is just comments. I've got another array. You see, this is a variable, right? Now, let's show, for example, how can I use the power of methods. So first thing I'm going to do is, you see, if you use CodePen, there's a button here called console, right? If you click on it, that opens a new window, right? Now, this window is a bit of a black box. It will take a bit to me to explain what it actually is, but just for now, understand that it's a bit of window where you can do some little exercises and do some tests on your website, right? Now, I can display stuff on this console, right? And I can use it with a command. Remember that JavaScript operates with keywords, right? JavaScript needs to understand specific keywords. So if you put console.log, right? And inside these brackets, I put Roger, right? JavaScript is going to show these text in here. To do so, I just simply need to click the button run, right? So if I click run, what CodePen does is it executes this code, right? So you see here, I can see Roger, right? So that's useful if you want to test things. For example, if you want to see what's the value of your variable menu. So if I write down menu, so this variable here, I can just clear it, right? And then I run it. In the screen, I would see the whole array, right? So I see this content is stored in this box, and I'm telling JavaScript to show the content of this box, which is what I see here, right? Now you'll say, Roger, what does this have to do with the methods that you were telling me a second? Okay, bear with me for a second. What I'm going to do is, remember that JavaScript follows an order, right? We talked about this before. It follows instructions top to bottom, one at a time. So JavaScript starts here and then goes down, right? One statement at a time. So what I can do is, first I'm going to show you what we're going to do is put some text. This is the first menu, right? I'm going to do this. So I'm just doing a bit of text, adding it, concatenating it. We saw that concept in the previous time, but it's just nothing but showing the contents of a variable and some text together. So what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to show you what do I see here, just so you see these methods at work. So this is the first, right? And then I see the content of the menu, right? So I'm just going to put this the first menu. Then I'm going to run it here. So you see the content. So this is the first menu, and then I see all the contents of the variable. Easy, right? Now what I can do is I can do menu dot push. And we're going to add here at the end is, say, for example, chocolate, right? So I'm going to push that element. And then what I'm going to do is, once I've added this element onto this array, I'm going to see the array again. So I'm saying console log the menu updated. Oops, excuse me, updated space plus menu, right? This plus, don't worry too much about it. What this plus is doing is, when you put a variable and some text, all what this plus does is it puts it into one sentence. So it just merges it. It's called string concatenation. So again, just going to show you this now. let's just call it actually before, so it's clearer, before and after, right? If I run this, what you'll see is before I've got the array, right? This is before, corresponds to this line. Then I push the element, and then after, I'm showing here after, and then I show the same array, but know that at the end I've added the element chocolate. Yeah, so that demonstrates a bit how does this method work, right? If then I did pop instead of push, I would just remove the last element. Now, any questions on this? I just wanted you to get a bit of an intuition as to how the methods work. Any questions on this before I move on? I'll just give you a second. No? Okay, just let us know if there's any questions, okay? And the time being, I'm just going to remove all of that so it's clear. Okay, so that's one of the concepts I wanted to show you, but let's raise the bar a little bit now. Now, with push and pop, what we can do is we can manipulate one element. So I can add one element onto the array and I can remove one element of the array, right? What I want to show you now is if I want to manipulate all elements in the array. So I've got this array. In this instance, I've got numbers, right? Remember, arrays can contain text, numbers, and even other types of objects, right? But let's just stick with numbers for now. Now, imagine that I wanted to, I wanted to have all these numbers and create a clone array with all the numbers divided by 10, right? I could just go ahead, create another array and take 50 divided by 10, it's 5, 330, and so on, right? And now it's easy because there's only 4 elements. But imagine your boss comes to you and says, there's 6,500 elements that I want you to divide by 10, and I need this in 2 hours, right? There's no way you can do it manually. Now, there's a method that JavaScript puts at your disposal that allows you to manipulate all elements in that array, right? The method, concretely, it's called map, the one that you see here. So I've got an array called numbers. It's got 4 numbers in it. Then I create another variable called divided. Remember, a variable is just a box, so I can put stuff in it, right? So in this variable, what I put is another box, which is numbers.map, right? As we saw earlier, .map is a method. So it's a specific execution that JavaScript is going to do to the array. In this instance, what map does is map says, listen, if you give me a set of instructions, I'm going to take the original array, I'm going to make a copy, and I'm going to apply that instruction to every single element on that array. Okay? So if I told map, hey map, I want you to divide every single number by 10, what map would give us is it would give us this array in return. So what you see on the right-hand side, it will be the result of it, right? So it would give us an array with the same amount of elements. So 4 elements input, 4 elements output, and each element divided by 10, right? So that's the concept. That's what map does. Now, how do I give instructions to map as to what to do? Where do I tell map, I want you to divide that element by 10? It's effectively what you place in between those brackets. So in between those brackets, what you do is you put a set of instructions that JavaScript is going to go, that map is going to go and apply to every single element in that array. Okay? I think there's a question. So Marta, I think you asked to embed in the page a form from Illustrator, for example. Yeah, so push, for example, would be used for, so yeah, for example, if you need to manipulate certain data, right, and there's a form, right, someone submits something, and say, for example, you're displaying all the suggestions that someone asked you. Hey, listen, share your requests. What you would do is you would ask users to input their requests. So they send you that request, and then you would do is you could push it onto an array, and that array is effectively displayed on your website. So at all times, you see the latest suggestions. Yeah, does that answer your question? Yeah, cool, perfect. Now, push is acts differently because pushes adds one element. What we're doing with map, and this is important, is it applies one set of instructions to every single element on the array. The set of instructions is the same. So you're asking, take one number and divide it by 10. And then map is going to go and take that logic and apply it to every single number, right? Any questions on this conceptually? Because I'm about to introduce to you a concept that if you've never heard before, I'm actually happy that I'm going to be the first one. Because in your journey on JavaScript, this concept is going to be recurring again and again and again and again. The concept that I'm about to introduce is that of the fact that I'm going to introduce the concept of function, right? So what we put in here, it's going to be a JavaScript function, okay? So we're going to come back to this exercise, but before we do so, let me introduce you now to the concept of a JavaScript function. So before we get into code, let's understand a bit the intuition about a JavaScript function, okay? A JavaScript function is nothing but a block of code that you can reuse again and again and again. It's a set of instructions. You tell JavaScript, this is a set of instructions, and I want to use this set of instructions multiple times, and I can use it multiple times, okay? So that's effectively a function. It's got a mission. This is the task that I want you to do. Divide a number by 10, and then I can use that function anytime and anywhere that I want. Let's put some more detail to that. This is first I want to see the anatomy of a function. This is what a function looks like, okay? This is the contemporary or the modern way of building functions. If you Google modern functions, you'll see that in old JavaScript, they were using the word function. It's still supported, but I would recommend you for you to use this nomenclature, which is the modern way of doing it, right? First thing we do is we put a const, okay? That's for constant, right? And we put a name, right? So that's the name of the function, constant. We put the assign symbol and then some brackets, okay? Then another brackets and this sort of arrow here, and then these curly braces here, right? Now, a couple of things to understand. This is the name of the function. These curly braces define the remit, the area of influence of a function. I crack a joke sometimes. Whatever happens in a function is like what happens in Las Vegas. Whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Whatever happens inside those curly braces stays inside that function. So whatever I do inside here stays in that function. So the curly braces define the space of influence for that function. Inside those curly braces, nothing else is going to happen, just whatever instructions you define on that function. So it's like a little wall inside the JavaScript wall, okay? Now, what ingredients can we play with? So imagine we're building a sandwich machine, right? So these curly braces define what the machine looks like, what operations you want the machine to do, right? Now in a sandwich maker, but just like in any machine you build, you need to give ingredients. And these ingredients are effectively what we place in here, in these brackets, right? Now these ingredients are placeholder. I call them ing1, 2, and 3. I could call them Roger, table, and screen. It doesn't really matter. I just placeholders. Whatever value, we're going to see after what's that. But these are just placeholders. So the sandwich maker just says, okay, you're giving me 3 ingredients. Now, what do you want me to do with them? So here, what we will do is we create a variable, right? We create a box, and we simply tell that function, take these 3 ingredients and sum them. This in JavaScript is just like in mathematics, sum. So if this is a number, 2 plus 2 plus 2, then we just sum that. And then it's storing it in this variable, right? In this box. Remember, this variable is local, means it's inside this function. It doesn't have any value outside of the function. Whatever happens in these curly braces is the remit of influence for that function, okay? Now, the sandwich maker does that, takes 3 ingredients, you ask it to sum them together in a variable named sandwich, and then it's going to give you something in return, right? For that, we use a keyword in the world of JavaScript, which is return. That means that the result of this operation is stored in this name here. So make sandwich will have stored in it the result of this operation, okay? Any questions on this? Now, that's how we declare a function. That is, nothing is happening right now. If I write this piece of code in JavaScript, JavaScript will be like, sure, Roger, whatever. I understand. You're telling me about a JavaScript function, but I'm not doing anything. This is called function declaration. You're telling JavaScript, these are the instructions I want to use, but I'm not using them. I'm simply telling you, keep an eye because this is a set of instructions I want to use, right? To use that function is what's called JavaScript function invoke. Is to invoke a function. The way I do it is I just simply use this this name. So make sandwich, I invoke the function, and then I pass 3 parameters, 3 ingredients, the 3 ingredients that the function is expecting. So if the function takes 3 parameters, you need to pass 3 parameters, right? Otherwise, the function will say, sorry, I don't understand. You told me 3 parameters, or 3 ingredients, and you're only giving me 2. So just make sure that you remember that. Now that effectively would be what's giving you the sandwich back, okay? But know that here I'm using ham, lettuce, and bread, but if I use this make sandwich again, I could be doing it with cheese, tomato, and white bread, right? And that would be a different line of code, and I would be reusing the same set of instructions. Now, I would like to ask you any questions on this concept. We're going to be looking at some examples now, but if there's any questions on this function, let me know. It's an important concept. Whether you continue learning JavaScript with us or you don't, it's a key concept for you to understand the JavaScript function part. Okay. Now, I'm just going to give you a second to make sure that if there's any questions, feel free to shoot them to us. Otherwise, don't worry if still that doesn't make 100% sense. I'm going to show you an example, and then we're going to be doing an activity together. Okay, where I'm going to need your help. Okay. Now, let me show you an example. This is just concepts. Let me now have a look at another example. So here at the top, I've got another example. Sum, that's the name of this function. It takes 2 parameters, right? Again, A and B. This could be anything. I remember when I started learning on my own JavaScript, I was just amazed at why people, it took me forever to understand why this was A and not something else, right? And in the world of JavaScript, they use specific words that I just had to comprehend. So I think it's just important to understand that these 2 words could be anything, all right? So then these are the 2 ingredients that we take, and then we sum them, right? It returns that, right? So that means that I'm creating a variable, let result. This is a box, remember? And in that box, I'm storing the invocation of a function. That is, the result of that function is going to be stored here. So if then I wanted to see the content of result, that would be 4, okay? And then you can use the color coding to follow where each number goes. So this first number is this A, which in turn is this A, which is stored here. And same for this one. Then the result of that is 4. Okay? Any questions? I think there's a question.
Marina, yes.
So Marina, yes, you can leave functions empty. You can have functions to do things that don't require any ingredients, any parameters. Yes, it's possible. It's possible to that. It depends on the use case, but it's possible. If you don't give ingredients, it's fine. So yeah. And then there was a question from Magali. Do you need different numbers to place all that? That's a very good question, Magali. Yeah, that's a very good question. So that's a bit of a more of an advanced concept. What you can do. So Magali's question is, what happens if you don't know how many placeholders do you need? What you would do is there's a way for you to break down these parameters. This is a bit of a more advanced concept. I'm going to answer your question, but if that's okay, I'm not going to go into too much detail. Effectively, what you do is instead of passing specific parameters, if you don't know how many, you pass a black box type thing, and then you open that black box here. You say, I'm going to give you this box function, and then I'm going to figure out what elements are inside of that box, and then you just break them down here, right? So you don't pass, you pass one unique parameter, and then effectively you break down that parameter here inside the function. So it's possible. I'm happy to take it offline if you want to address it separately. Hope that answers your question. But for the time being, you will be okay just using functions with a specific number of parameters. Is that okay, Magali? Hope that answers your question. Cool. So that's a function. I've talked a lot. So now I would like everybody here to help me understand how we're doing in terms of functions. So let's go and guess the answer. I'm going to show you now a couple of functions, and then I would like for you to tell me what the result of that function you think would give. Okay. So feel free to comment in the chat. It's not a competition. If you don't know the answer, don't worry about it. We're going to start simple. Okay. So there's this function here. My question to you is, what's the value of the variable result? Okay, so we're creating a function named sum, takes 2 parameters, right? And then these 2 parameters are summed, and then we're deducting 3. And then that's the function definition. And then what we're doing is we're creating a variable named result. And then in that box, we put the function invocation, and we pass 2 parameters, 2 and 2. So most of you said 1. Yes, and I have to say, I might know more about you than coding for now, but I'm not very good at math, so I need to actually calculate it. Yeah, it's 1. So the result is 1, right? So just for those that it is just an operation here. This bracket, don't let this bracket distract you. in numbers, if you're using numbers, these brackets, just like in mathematics, what they do is they force JavaScript to make this operation first. So this is a 2 and this is a 2. So that's why, because of these brackets, these two are combined. So this is a 4. And it happens because these brackets force JavaScript to do that first. Okay, it's a 4 minus 3, then it's 1. Okay, perfect. Let's do another one. Now, remember console log? Console log is what we used earlier. Just remember what we did earlier. Now we're creating a function called message, and we're passing it a parameter a. This parameter a is in turn passed into console log, and then we're invoking that message. So note that we're not storing the result anywhere, right? We're not storing it in a variable. We're just asking JavaScript to execute that function, right? Now, what happens here? Now, the result you get is not of a variable. I would like to ask you, with this function, what happens? That's right. So a couple of people already replied. Yes, Marta and Sarah, both right. So what this does is it just simply shows console log here, right? So let me just actually, it would just show the message here, right, in the console, right? That's exactly right. Now, sorry, just loading. Cool. So just as an example that you can get functions to do stuff that it's not limited to inside its braces, its curly braces, right? What I said earlier about Vegas is when you create variables and you do operations, these only stay here. But console log has reach outside of the function because by definition, console log prints out a message, right? So good on you. Now, a couple more, raising a bit the bar. Let's make it a bit more difficult. So that prints code up in console. Perfect. Another one, this one here. Don't be intimidated by this. With the concepts that we've talked about today, you should be able to answer it. So we're creating a function named print. We're passing two parameters. One is R and one is B, right? And then we're returning R, the element B of an array, we suppose, an array named R, right? Then outside of the function, we create a variable called colors. It's an array. It has two elements in it. One is blue, one is red. And then we create a second variable named result, which takes the function print that we define above. And the first parameter of that function is colors, the array colors. And then it's the number 1. My question is, what's the value of the variable results?
So Alex and Marina said red. Sada said red as well.
Right. Perfect. So that's exactly right. So it does give you red. Okay. Now, for those that don't understand, don't worry. This return here, I'm going to explain it in a second. What is we're doing is we're passing this array. So right now, I want you to imagine that this array is here. So instead of R, we have this array, right? And then B is number 1. So what we're doing here is instead of R, you have the whole array, all this array, right? And because we know that if we return a specific index, if I use these square brackets and I put a number in it, what JavaScript is going to do is going to count the number of elements inside that array. Remember, arrays start from 0. So blue is the element 0, and 1 is the element red. So JavaScript is going to give me the element 1, which is 0, 1. Okay? And then it gives me the value red. Okay? Don't worry if this is still not 100%, in particular for those that did not attend the previous lessons. What I would suggest is this: watch the previous lessons. Make sure you ground the concepts about arrays and how we retrieve them. Tyna actually talked about this concept earlier. Make sure you go through it again, and then go through and have this look at this exercise and make sure you understand where that information and how that information flows. Okay. And if there's any questions, you can always ask us. Okay. But make sure you understand those concepts. One more. The question is, what's the variable result? What's the value in it? So 3 parameters, function named temperature. There's a sum, there's an alert, and there's a return. Now, 2 things happen. For those that don't know, alert, what alert does is it triggers a pop-up. So JavaScript will create a pop-up in your browser, and the content of that pop-up is going to be whatever you place inside those brackets. So my question to you is, what things happen by executing that function? 2 things are going to happen. So I'll give you a few seconds to think about it. So we're passing three parameters, A, B, C, which are these three elements here. First is a sum of the first two parameters. Then we're passing the result of that sum inside alert, right? Remember, alert is a pop-up. And in addition to that, we're returning the operation of C minus 8. Right? So two things are going to happen as a result of that function. Don't let yourself be intimidated. If you follow along, you'll be able to break it down. There's some answers, I think pretty much right. So two things happen here. There's a pop-up with the number 25, right? And then it returns 10, right? So remember, alert does one thing. Remember, functions can get JavaScript to do multiple things, and that's an example, right? So alert triggers a pop-up, which is 25. Now 25 is just simply 12 plus 13. So these two are effectively combined here. And then the variable sum is now the value, has the value 25 in it, which is effectively what we pop up, right? Is the triggering the pop-up with that content. In addition, this function gives us the C value, which is 18 minus 8, and that results 10. Okay, now that's some examples of a function. I hope that makes sense. We're going to see some functions together, but before, in a practical way, but before we do that, with what we've learned, let's go back to the case that we had earlier. Now, remember, we were stuck here, right? We had this array with 4 elements, and we wanted to use map that we know takes a function to effectively return an array with all the numbers divided by 10, right? Now we know how to do it. Now, the way to do it is we put a function inside here, okay? We can create a function that takes one number and divides it by 10. That's effectively what you see at the bottom left, right? Function name named by 10. It takes one number, it doesn't care what number, and it goes ahead and it returns you the result of that number divided by 10, right? Now, one difference when using functions with map. Here before, we saw that we pass the 3 parameters for the function, right? So if the function takes 3 parameters, we pass 3 parameters. With map is slightly different, because what you do is you pass the function. So in map, in the brackets, you just put the function name in it, right? So this function, you just put the function name here. And you don't pass any parameters, because map knows that you're telling map, when you place a function here, what you're telling map is, hey, what you want me to do is to take this first number, give it to this function, execute this, and give you the result and put it in an array. So I'm taking one array, and I'm going to execute this set of instructions to every single element here, right? You don't need to give me the parameters. I'm a map. I already know what I'm doing, right? So the map goes ahead, takes that function, and executes it. So imagine that map automatically for you, manually automatically takes this function. It feeds to it the first number. It divides it by 10, and it puts it in an array, right? Same for the 300, for the 60, and the 80. And the result of that is an array with the same set of instructions applied to every single element. Okay, does that make sense? Any questions on this? Just want to make sure we understood that concept. Map is an enormously powerful method when combined with functions. So if you've got any questions, let me know. Otherwise, let's just get into a bit of a practical mode. Okay. Now, where will we be using map for? Map has a lot of purposes, right? So it can help you solve problems when it comes to bigger number of elements. So if you have lots and lots and lots of elements and you want to make changes, for example, imagine you have some text, and so that's something you could actually do right now without the need of a direct web development purpose. Imagine you've got, I don't know, 1,000 email addresses, right? And these 100,000 email addresses, you need to lowercase them. Someone just wrote to you, roger@roger.com, right? And then you take that and you're like, okay, now I need these in lower cases. How do I do it? You can use map for that. Map is perfect for big tasks with a lot of the same tasks repeated across them, right? Now I'm going to show you an example. So we've got this coffee shop here. Just going to set some context. So we've got a coffee shop and I've got my menu here, right? Now this menu, these variables, that's some of the one of the tasks that or the exercises that some of you did as a result of the previous lesson, where to effectively dynamically show that content. So this content is not manually hard coded. The way we're doing this content is effectively coming from this variable, right? So this variable and this price. So I'm doing it thanks to this query selector. Okay. Don't worry if that doesn't make sense. Watch the previous lessons and it will in just no time. Okay. But just understand that this content is not in HTML. We're actually pulling it from these variables. Okay. Now, all what I did is I created a copy of this. So I have a copy of my prices. So menu, I created a variable called updated items, and I store menu in it. What this does is it creates a copy of menu, just so I'm not manipulating directly the menu variable. All right. So I've got updated items, which is menu, and I've got updated prices, which is prices. Okay. So effectively, think as if this is effectively stored here, right? It's as if I had this here, same story, and this is effectively stored here, right? Just by doing that copy, that's effectively what I'm doing. Okay. So now I'm going to be working with those two. All right. Just for context. Now, imagine you have this coffee shop website and you're the web developer, and the owner tells you, listen, Roger, I'm actually running a promotion this Friday, and I want all my prices to be reduced by 25% because I'm doing a promotion and, I just want to generate some additional demand and so on, right? Now, obviously, I only have 6 elements, right? But imagine right now that I had 3,000 items on sale, right? Imagine you go to Amazon and you've got all the prices there, right? How would you do that? Okay, with what we've learned, we should be able to automatically do that. So remember, the objective that we have, and the reason why I use these two symbols is because this is a comment in JavaScript. So JavaScript is going to ignore that. It's just comments for you. It's the objective. It's effectively reduce all prices by 25%. Okay. Now I'm going to do an exercise with you that what effectively I'm going to try to break down a problem and turn it into JavaScript terms. That's what's called pseudo coding. So it's not really coding, but what you're doing is you're breaking down a business problem and breaking it down into smaller chunks of work. Now here it might seem easy and it's not difficult. You just need to apply an analytical mindset. But when you're handling as a web developer with bigger and more complex problems, that's going to be super useful. So let's break down this problem. How do I take this and I do something with JavaScript to solve that problem? So to do so, I just need to effectively break this problem down. Okay. Now, first thing I'm going to do is to reduce all prices by 25%. I need to create a function that takes one number and reduces it by 25%. Okay. Now, if I type too fast, let me know. I'm trying. Don't feel like you have to code alongside with me. If you do and it go too fast, just let me know. But otherwise, we're recording this video, so you can always watch it and just code at your own leisure after. Okay. Now, that's the first step that I would do. So the first step would be to create a function that takes one number and reduces it by 25%. Second one is.
Sorry, Roger.
Yes.
Someone said in the chat if the 30 price should be 2.5 or not.
No, a different price.
Correct, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
There was just no space. Yeah. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8.
And
yeah.
You have 7 in the menu.
7 in the menu. Oh, right, because I removed the push. Yeah, just put chocolate here. Yeah. Good pickup. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Marta.
So that's 4 and 4, 8 and 4 and 4, 8. Perfect. Yeah, that's because I removed the push later. So good pickup. Tina or Marshall or whoever it was. Thanks. So again, the objective that we have is we need to reduce all prices by 25%. For us to do so, we first need to create a function that takes one number and reduces it by 25%. Second step is, so that's 1. Second step is use or apply this function with map to the price array, right? So with those 2 steps, I'm effectively solving that problem. I can give an answer to this business problem by virtue of just breaking down the problem slightly. Okay. Any questions on this thus far? Cool. So let's go ahead and do the first step. we're going to create a function. So now we know how to do it. Do const, and let's call it divider. Okay, just do a divider, right? That's how we create a function. We put the assigned value, brackets. Remember, here's where we're going to put the stuff, the ingredients that the function is going to be using. We use this arrow and then the curly braces. Now that right there is the anatomy of a function. That's all what we need for a function, right? Now, let's create some space here. First thing, we need to give an ingredient to the function. So watch this. We're going to give it a number, but it's too long, so we're going to give it a num. Okay, that's just a placeholder. So that's effectively the num, the number we're going to be using. And we want that number back, right? So I do return because I want to store that value here as a number. Now, as I said earlier, I'm not very good at mathematics, but I know if you want to reduce a number by 25%, what you could do is you can multiply it by 0.75. So if I take a number and multiply it by 1, it gives me the same number. But if I do it by 0.75, then the number is a bit smaller, right? It's reduced by 25%, right? Now, that's the function that I've done. Now, before I go ahead and I do my implementation, and that's an important task, there's a bunch of people in software development teams called software testers, QA testers, right? So what these people do is they go ahead and test the code that you've written to make sure it meets the expectations. We're not going to do exactly that, but that's a bit the intuition I want you to understand. So before we use this function in our real environment, let's test how it works. To do so, we can use console log. That's what console log is super useful for, because we can do some tests here and see the result, right? So let's create a variable named result, right? And in that variable, we're going to invoke this function. So we're going to use the divider function, right? And remember, this function is begging for one parameter, right? Which is a number, which could be just 10 or 100, right? Now, this is going to take this parameter, execute this function, and store the result in here. And result is effectively what I'm going to be showing in this grid. Okay? Hopefully, everybody can follow along about what's the flow here. If that's not the case, just let me know. Okay? So if I now run this, I will see the result of that function, which is 75. Okay? So we now, perfect, super. We've got now a function that takes one number and divides it by 25%. Super. This test is matching. Perfect. Now we've got this step. Now we just need to go ahead now and apply this function to the array that we want to use, right? So we're using this here. But it just paste it here. It's easier for us to see. So all the prices that we see in our website are here, right? So you see 3, 2.5, 2, 5, 4, right? So what we do now is we're going to be applying this function to this array, right? Because this is effectively what's printed. So what I do is prices.map, right? Remember that that method allows us to apply a single function to an entire array. Now, one thing to remember, map creates a copy of the array. So prices is never manipulated. I can do 50 things here with map. Prices will always be here, chilling, no problem. Prices says, this is me being the database. You're not doing anything to me, right? So when we do prices.map or any variable.map, we effectively create a copy. So it's taking this as the original, makes a copy and execute, and that copy is effectively the result of that operation, right? So simple. We know that we can just write down here the variable, the function name divider, right? And let's go ahead and test that. So console log. And now if I just put these here and I clear that, just click run, I should be able to see the result of that operation, right? Which is all these numbers. That works, but let's have a look and let's see if I can actually, if I remove that, you'll see that my prices on my website, because it's all connected, are no longer the ones that I had. I have actually been divided by 25%, right? So you see here, I've got 2.5, 1.87, 1.5, and so on. And the original values that we had are those here, right? So we're taking all these numbers and dividing them by 25%. Now, what's the beauty about it is that if, imagine your boss said, Roger, did I tell you 25%? Sorry, mate, I actually made 35%. What would you do if you had done this manually? First of all, you would jump out the window because you spend the whole weekend updating that as manually. JavaScript, instead of 25, I can change this to be 65. So multiply this number by 65. I change that, I click run. all of a sudden, magically, all the numbers, all the prices here have already been adjusted. Okay. Now, this is just to show you a bit the power of map and functions when working together. Obviously, we're using it with numbers. I can also use it with text. Now, this is a bit outside of the scope of this lesson, but I thought, well, I'll still show you as another example. So the text that we see here, so coffee, green tea, chai, hot chocolate, and black tea, all of that comes from updated items, right? So I can also apply a function here. Let's say, for example, for whatever strange reason, I wanted to duplicate the number, excuse me, the text. So imagine I create a function called duplicator, right? And it takes a word, right? So what I do is I just put a sign, then an arrow, and then the brackets, right? So this duplicator, all what this does is it takes the word plus a space plus word. So what this does is it takes the word and it returns it with a space twice. So it returned the same word twice with, some text. Or we could say on offer. So imagine I wanted to now say on offer. I wanted to say that these items are actually now on offer. So instead of manually changing all of that, I created a function that takes one word, takes that word, and it gives me a full sentence where the word is followed by a blank space and the text on offer with an exclamation mark, right? So to test it, if I just do console log and I just do the duplicator, so I do duplicator, right? I hope that's clear. Actually, let me just put it outside so it's clearer. Just going to create a variable called result, and then I do a duplicator and I pass the word, doesn't matter, coffee, for example, right? And then I just print the result here, click on the console, run this code, and you should see how this function takes the word coffee and says coffee on offer, right? Cool, right? But what's cooler is if I now go ahead and apply this to the full array. So I remove all of that. And here I do menu.map duplicator. Right? Remember, I don't need to pass the parameters here because map already knows how to do that, right? So right now you see my text is here. You see coffee, green tea, chai, hot chocolate, black tea. If I run this, the website is going to be displaying the result of these functions. So you're going to see each of these: coffee on offer, green tea on offer, chai on offer, and so on, right? So you see the power of functions and maps together. It just massively allows you to save time by automating tasks, right? This is just a silly example, but it's just to give you some intuition and just effectively turn on a bit your imagination as to potential uses for these concepts that we've introduced. Now, any questions on that, let me know. Otherwise, let me just do a bit of a recap. So here, so the function does that. Now, what we've seen today, okay, in addition to the recap, we've seen an introduction to array methods. So we've seen pop, push, and map. There's a whole lot of them. I suggest for you, we can send you some links if you want, but I suggest for you to just check them out because there's a lot of them and they're quite funky. We now know how to add and remove values in arrays thanks to the methods that I just talked earlier. We can modify all values within an array as per the examples that we've just seen. You have a basic understanding of JavaScript functions. Remember, JavaScript functions are going to be with you for your entire journey with JavaScript. It's an extremely powerful and important concept. I suggest that you get really familiar with them and start using them as you see fit. Okay, and also you know how to create and execute functions. Remember that there's a function definition and a function invocation, right? You execute the function. So it's a lot of concepts. Good job on that. Hope that all makes sense. If you want to truly unlock the power of these concepts, I recommend for you to watch out the previous workshops that we've done because they build on top of each other. So the previous knowledge is just accumulative, right? So it builds upon what we've done in the past. Now, I don't know if that says there's any questions that you have on the concept. Otherwise, let me turn the tables. I've been talking a lot, and some of those that are attending today's workshop have already noticed that this is just the beginning of this of your journey in JavaScript if you've never done it before. So now we're going to turn the table. Now, with what you've learned, we would ask you to create a CodePen account if you don't have it, right? We can give you a boilerplate. A boilerplate is nothing but access to this, so you can effectively build on top of this code and effectively make your website yours, right? If you attend or watch the workshops of the previous sessions, you'll learn how to build this, and how to build this. So we'll give it for you, so you can start from scratch, but I would recommend for you to watch the previous lessons. Now, with what you've learned today, you should be able to, assuming that you've done concatenated product list. So this list here, right? You've got here a list concatenated, right? So again, for those that didn't attend the previous workshops, don't worry, it will make more sense if you watch the previous lesson. But what we're doing here is effectively taking the first element of one array plus $symbol and the second element, right? That's string concatenation. So we're picking one element from items and one element for prices. So one element from an array, one element from an array. So if that's what you did, that's what your website has, building upon that assumption, create a function that takes one item and a price and returns them as a string. So what you're manually doing item by item, get a function to do it and just call that function multiple times. So give a function coffee, for example, on $5. That's the input that your function is going to take. The result of that function needs to be one sentence where coffee and $5 are all one string, all one sentence. So you've been doing this manually by virtue of doing item plus item. Do have a function that do so for you, right? So that would be just create a function and then you use it multiple times. Secondly, create a new array of item price strings using map and the above function. So as I mentioned earlier, don't make operations on the original array, just create a copy. So you can have more peace of mind that your data is not going to be removed. And thirdly, display the values of this new array in your website. So start playing with functions, the concatenation that you've done, turn it into a function using a copy array and display those values in your array. Now, share your website. I'm going to show you how we use Slack, and we are happy to give you personalized feedback. Now, how do we do that? In the email that we'll send you after this session, we're going to send you an invite to some of the lessons, as well as the access to our Slack channel. So if you're not familiar with Slack, it's very easy. It's like a chat. We've got a lot of people in here. Effectively, some of you have already shared some, their code pens and stuff. So feel free to create yours, share it. Don't be shy and ask questions. Now, Tina here or myself will be able to answer any questions. We've been providing individualized feedback. We're happy to do so. We just want to make sure that you continue your journey. So don't think as the end of this workshop as cool, that's all what I learned. Think of it as the beginning, okay? As I always say in coding, try things, break things. Nothing's gonna happen. Get creative. Search Google stuff, ask us for links, just continue your journey. Break stuff, okay? It's okay. It's just in a virtual world, so nothing's gonna happen, all right? Now, we'll have a section for questions in just a second. Before I do that, if you want to continue learning with us, we have a whole lot of courses coming up. So we've got courses on product management, full stack development, and data analytics. Some of them are already sold out, so I would suggest for you to check it out. If you're interested, check codeup.tech or reach out to Tina, myself, or our colleague Ruth. She manages admins and she can give you all the information. So we've got a lot of that. If you want a full detail and get into full stack development, you can consider that. If not, you can continue attending these workshops, and that's cool as well. Okay. Now we've got a few minutes for questions. Any questions on any concepts that we touched upon, or any burning questions that you have about coding in general, or anything at all? You can spare a couple of minutes in case there's any questions. If not, you can expect for us to send you an email after today's session. We're going to share with you an invitation to the Slack channel, so you can share with us your projects if you want to. We're going to share you a link to some of the workshops that we did in the past, so you can be up to speed. And also we'll share you a link to this workshop so you can follow along fine, because I didn't expect for you to just follow along with me. So if you want to do coding and you want to just keep checking this lesson to make sure that you understood the concepts, feel free to do so. I don't know if there's any questions. Tina, I don't know if there's anything you want to add from your end.
No.
Cool. So no questions. I hope that was useful. Thanks very much for your time. Again, if there's any questions now, we're happy to stay a couple of minutes. If not, watch out for your email and your invites, and we'll make sure that we'll keep giving you more content. But I encourage you to join us on Slack so you can continue learning with us. Okay, don't be afraid. Reach out to Tina, reach out to myself. We'll give you. We just want to make sure you continue learning. So reach out to us for individual personalized feedback if you want. Okay. So that's that. Thanks, team. Have a good weekend.
Marta has a question.
Yes.
There is one more workshop, right?
Yes. So there's going to be more JavaScript coming up. There's a whole lot still we need to cover, but there's going to be definitely another workshop this side of Christmas, and then let's see how the student evolves. So definitely at least one more. So yeah, check it out because there's going to be more another one, a couple of weeks or so, something like that. But in the meantime, reach out to us on Slack. Make sure you continue learning. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you all for coming, and we're going to keep you updated in Slack, and we are always posting things there. Okay.
Marina had a question.
Yeah.
The list items in coffee shop. Yeah, Marina, is it okay if we take you through this on Slack, or would you like to do it over voice? If not, maybe Slack is okay. Perfect. So probably Tina will just walk you through that list just to make sure that the code makes sense. If not, we'll do it. Yeah, no problem.
All right.
All right, Tan. Thanks, team. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
I'll chat to you soon.
Have a good weekend, everybody.